Hi, my name is Beth Green, and today I'd like to talk to you as a friend, as though I were sitting in your living room and we were having a little chat about life. As you may know, I am the host of Inside Out, The Inner Revolution, which is a radio program on voiceamerica.com variety channel. I'm also the founder and spiritual director of theinnerrevolution.org. So obviously I'm very interested in the inner revolution. And why am I? And that's what I want to talk to you about today, that the inner revolution is the fight of our lives, because it is the fight for our lives. And when I say the fight for our lives, I mean on every level, on the physical level, on the emotional level, on the spiritual level. Now, why do I say that? Well, in a minute I can tell you what the inner revolution is about. It's about getting beyond our typical ego-based view of the world, that we are alone, we're separate, and that everything is about us. And it's moving towards an understanding that we are really one, and that we really are one, and that we also need to be held accountable for the impact of our behavior, because we impact ourselves and one another, and that we need to support the whole, and the whole will support us because we are one. So that is the instant explanation of what the inner revolution is about. It's about coming to these realizations and then starting to act from them. And I have done some other videos about that. Well, why do I say that's the fight of our lives? Well, let's say when you were a child, I don't know how you were raised, but this is how I was raised. I was raised to either get a good job for myself, or better yet, find a rich husband, or a good husband, or a loving husband, or something. And that this was all about me, and that's how I was going to, live my life. And yes, maybe I could do some good on the way along the route, but that certainly life was about me and about satisfying my needs. Well, were you raised any differently? Come on. Now, let's say some of you were raised with a little philanthropic feeling. It's like, well, they had an old expression among the aristocrats, noblesse oblige. Those of us who were aristocrats got to be concerned about the peasants. Well, sometimes we have a philanthropic view. It's like, oh, well, we're so blessed, we should give to others. And I mean, hey, I'd rather that people be so concerned that they should give to others than they only be thinking about themselves. But that isn't oneness. It means like, oh, I'm above, I'm better, I have so much, I really need to give to others. Well, hey, what we're saying is no. It's not that I am blessed and I should give to others, or that I need to watch out for number one because a dog-eat-dog world, or because I need to get a rich guy so I can take care of my children, or so I'll have a future retirement when his pension comes through. No, it's that we are one. See, now, I wasn't raised that way. Were you? Were you really, honestly, look inside, were you raised with the idea that we are really one? Now, what do I mean when I say we are really one? And I mean we really are one. Okay, let's take a look at global warming. See, there was a time when you could have a polluting factory that you owned, but you could go live somewhere else, in the suburbs, let's say. Well, what happens when the smog starts moving over to your neighborhood? Because it's in the air. See, we all breathe the same air. We're one. I have an aphorism that says you cannot clean the air over one house in Los Angeles. I don't care if you are, King Tut. Maybe you can have air conditioning and air purifiers in your house, but when you walk outside, right? So this is what's happening to our planet on a physical plane. We've been polluting, we've been smogging, we've been burning fossil fuels, we have been destroying our infrastructure, we are ruining our oceans. And I don't care who you are, you're going to eat the fish from the ocean. Your climate is going to change. There's no separation anymore. And I'll tell you something else. Then I'm going to get to even deeper stuff in a minute. But 911, 9/11, well, it's so funny. 9/11 was the 911 call. It was the emergency call. Now, what do I mean when I say that? 9/11 was the time that the World Trade Center was demolished by these terrible terrorists. Well, you know what it really was? It was a wake-up call. See, there was a time when people like us, like Americans, could send our troops over to Central America just to take over anybody's country if we didn't like their policies. And who suffered? Well, the poor people who lived there suffered. Our troops suffered. But the rest of us sat there, eating bonbons. And maybe we watched some terrible footage on TV, but we listened to some politician who was justifying our behavior. Well, that went on for a long time. How do you think it was back in Spain? See, when the Spaniards sent their boats over to colonize South America, and they were importing slaves. You were sitting there, you were in the aristocracy, you didn't have to notice except when your husband came home with syphilis from all of his exploits, and suddenly it was impacting you. But see, what's so interesting about today's world is that technology makes these impacts faster and more profound. So let's say the Western nations have an abysmal history in relationship to the Middle East. Well, I'm not saying the Middle East is perfect. Don't even think that that's what I'm saying. But certainly the Western nations have a history of colonialism in the Middle East. Well, when people don't like what you do today, they don't have to get on a boat that takes them 6 months to get there. They get on a plane, and they're at your door, see? And they're on the internet, and they're talking to their relations who are living in the U.S. And those relations are getting those messages on the internet, and all of a sudden you've got a group of people in your own country who hate you. You see, technology has made us one. And do you understand what I mean when I say that 9/11 was a wake-up call? We used to think we were so fortressed. We were the one house in Beverly Hills that had the clean air over it. Well, we're not. So on a political level, we see it happening. Technology has brought us together in such a way that we have to acknowledge that we're one, and that everything we do is not only going to have an effect on other people, it's going to have an effect on us. Now, on a deeper level, we have always known we are one. So when I was talking about it's a fight of our lives on a physical plane, I mean our planet, the infrastructure of the earth that has been supporting us is so degraded that we are losing the resources that we need for our physical survival. But on an emotional level, you see, we're also fighting for our lives because we have pretended that we don't feel what we're doing, that we don't notice when we hurt one another. We just go along and go along and go along, acting like business as usual. And yet it's a lie. Now, I've been an intuitive counselor for a lot of years. I've worked with a lot of people. I know people. I might say I know them inside out. That man whose hand is like this, striking his child, is dying inside. He's dying inside because of what he's doing. He's probably dying inside anyway, or he wouldn't be doing it. Yet he doesn't stop that hand from striking that child, or from hitting that woman, or from killing another man. He has listened to someone who has told him that it is absolutely essential to go out and kill these people for some reason that he doesn't even understand. I mean, I think the most gross example of that in recent years, relatively recent years, was the invasion of Iraq, where everybody was told, oh my God, we have to invade Iraq because of 9/11. Well, the Iraqis didn't have anything to do with 9/11. And yet, people were sent over to Iraq, devastated the country, created even more havoc, didn't help anybody, and we did it for some cockamamie reason that was made up. And what about that guy who went out there and he bombed and he maimed? Don't you think he felt it? Now, I know that technology has also created the opposite effect. Like, oh, I knew a young man who went over and he was in the Navy, and see, he just pushed buttons, and then some, I don't know, some drone or some bomber or whatever it was, went up in the air and just dropped bombs on people. He never even had to see them. If he had seen them, he couldn't have done it. You can't do it. You just can't do it. Well, I shouldn't say you can't, because how many centuries have we programmed ourselves to hurt one another without feeling? But you see, what happens to those guys? They start drinking. They start using drugs. I remember the Vietnam War so well, the poor American soldiers who went over there and were dropping napalm and Agent Orange and were killing villagers and were smoking pot. They couldn't look at what they were doing, guys. I know it. I don't believe that there's a gang member on the planet who doesn't feel sick inside about what he's doing or she's doing, but can't admit it. See? Why? Because, hey, if you're not tough, somebody else is going to get you, or if you don't hang with the crowd, you're all alone, and if you're alone and you're living in a dangerous neighborhood, it's going to happen to you. We die inside when we hurt one another. You see, it's emotional. And we make ourselves stupid. Now, I have been reading lately that there is still a lot of female genital mutilation taking place, where women's clitorises are cut or cut off, or their vaginas are sewn shut. It's tradition, and that it's actually happening in the West as well as in Africa and in Asia. It's appalling. I can't believe we're still doing this to ourselves. There is no justification, no health justification. But see, if you don't have this, maybe some guy isn't going to like you, and some mother is trying to protect her daughter from being unmarriageable. But see, here's the other thing. You can look at it and say, oh my God, are people crazy? And yet, how many of you introduced your daughters to high-heeled shoes? I call that female foot mutilation. Don't you know when you stand up in a pair of high-heeled shoes that you're tipping over, that your toes are being squunched? Why are we doing this insane behavior? Because we're so programmed, we're so brainwashed, we're so afraid of standing up and saying anything. So there's our bodies again, and there's our hearts. And it isn't just that. It's makeup. It's dyeing our hairs. It's chemicals that we use that are damaging our bodies, that we're doing because we think we have to in order to fit in. That's a fight for our bodies, but it's also a fight for our souls. We feel the pain of one another. We feel it in our bodies. We feel it in our hearts. We have to reclaim our humanity by admitting what we feel. How outraged we are at the things that we do to one another and to ourselves. I can't believe that the male hierarchy in any nation is not aware of the damage to women of the oppressive and repressive laws and customs that are all over the world, that shut women up, that cover women up, that stop women from realizing themselves, from going out, from being free. And don't you think those men are sick inside because of what they're doing? Do you think a man can throw acid in a woman's face and not feel sick inside? Do you think a family can disown a child, a girl, because she's been raped? Do you think their hearts aren't breaking on some level? This is a fight for our souls, for us to stop pretending we don't know what we're doing. When I go out and pass a homeless person and don't look at them, it's because I can't face it. I don't know what to do. I do everything that I can, but I can't fix them. I can't fix their alcoholism. I can't fix their mental illness. I can't fix their history. I can't fix their low wages. I don't even want to see it. I can't imagine what it's like to actually grow up in the third world and have to face the intense poverty and oppression that you see every day. It just must make you sick inside. And what happens to people like that is we start blanking out ourselves. The inner revolution begins with the assumption that we are one and that we really can't hurt one another without hurting ourselves. Because we are one on the same planet. We are all one physically. We are all one emotionally. We are one spiritually. We just are. We feel these things. And we have to start reorganizing our thinking. We have to start raising our children with that awareness. We need to help sensitize our children to the reality of the pain that's happening on our planet today. We have to give them tools to deal with that pain so they don't just shut down like we did, so many of us. Now, some people are outraged and make a fight. God bless them. Some of those people just get angry and they fight in a not oneness kind of a way. Like, oh, look at them, look at them, look at them. I'm not talking about fighting that way. I'm talking about fighting from the perspective of the inner revolution where we know we are one. That anything that someone else is doing, either I have done it or I'm capable of doing it. I can be just as mean as anybody else. I can be just as corrupt. I can be just as selfish and self-centered. It isn't good enough to be the victim yelling at the perpetrator. No one is innocent. You see it in families where one of the family members, let's say, is the major wage earner and is killing him or herself to make money and is taking abuse from his or her superiors and is or being abusive to those beneath or below him or her. And what are they doing? They're drinking, they're taking cocaine, they're doing whatever they have to keep it up, to keep it up, to keep it up. What's happening to those people on the inside? I care about everyone. There is no one who is downtrodden. Who isn't downtrodden by someone who is downtrodden. Downtrodden in some way. Their spirits were crushed. Their minds were warped. They're polluting themselves. And don't think that just because somebody gets puffed up, that that's a great thing. How many documentaries or stories have you seen about stars who ended up dead because of a drug overdose? Why do you think that happens? Because the people around them keep them puffed up. They want them to go on the stage, make a lot of money for a lot of people. So they're like high on the whole experience. If they're not high before they get on the stage, they're high from the whole experience. And afterwards, everybody keeps them high. Oh, put them on a pedestal, worship them. How are people supposed to live like that? There's no grounding in that. They just stay high and stay high and stay high, and they drink all night or they take drugs all night, and then they have to take a pill to wake them up in the morning. They're ungrounded. They don't have real relationships. They're flattered. When I worked for the Occidental Petroleum Corporation, yes, I lived in the real world, even though I'm a spiritual teacher. When I worked for the Occidental Petroleum Corporation, the chairman of the board, Dr. Armand Hammer, was so puffed up by the people around him. It was unbelievable. He was called doctor. You couldn't look him in the face, really. Everybody was scared of him. The story was that he fired 32 vice presidents on the same day and had the police come in to make sure they were escorted out. Everybody was afraid of this man. My boss would occasionally get a call from him. 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. He didn't care. He was somewhere else in another part of the world, and he just wanted to call her and ask her for something. She never said, "Excuse me, Dr. Hammer, are you aware of the fact that you just called me at 4 o'clock in the morning?" Of course not. He was puffed up. Nobody was aware, no woman was allowed to wear pants on the same floor that Dr. Hammer inhabited. Women wore pants in the rest of the corporation, but not on his floor. Sick. He was being protected from the reality. Everybody was afraid to ask him anything or make a suggestion. Man, this is the world we live in. You put people on top of a hierarchy and they are scared of falling. Think of yourself on top of a ladder. Who's coming after you from underneath? Who is going to bomb you from above? Who's coming after you from the side? You think that just because someone is a powerful looking person that they actually have any power? Inside every human being, I see the child who once was, the one who could still feel, the one who cried, the one who felt sad when he or she saw someone else hurt. Oh yes, I'm not pretending that children are not in their egos. Absolutely, children are selfish, self-centered, they're like little egos. But they have, on the other hand, the capacity to feel, to know their oneness, the capacity to wonder. They went out, we went out, I was a child once too, went out and looked at the stars, and I was in awe about the world and the universe we lived in. I wasn't yet caught up with how do I look? How's my hair? What's my title? The inner revolution, it's about freeing ourselves, freeing our minds, freeing our spirits, freeing our hearts to become natural human beings again, if we ever were. And we have a lot of resources. We have technology. We have wealth. There's so much that we can do together if we come together for the benefit of everyone and break this mindset that says that we really are alone and separate. I ask you to look at yourself right now and think about for 1 minute all of the things, all the suffering that you have ignored in your life because it wasn't convenient to become aware of it because you were afraid to make the fight, because you were afraid somebody was going to hurt you or a member of your family. Think of just one thing that you saw. I'm going to end very shortly, but I want to tell you something. When I was 5 years old, I started giving family lectures and to my parents' friends about how they were prejudiced and they were uncaring towards others. I must have felt the pain. Nobody taught me to be that way. I must have felt the pain. But when I was 9, my parents took me to a concert in New York City, and it was a free concert, and it was in the middle of Harlem. And I had grown up in a quite poor family, but it was a white working class neighborhood. I had never seen a black ghetto before. And I can tell you, and I'm not exaggerating, that night changed the course of my life. Because that night, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to do absolutely everything I could to end human suffering that was caused by human beings. If that capability was in my heart, it's in yours. The inner revolution is the fight of our lives, the fight to become fully human again, the fight for our bodies, for our planet, for our emotions, for our minds, so that we stop justifying it, for our spirits. Give everything you have to this fight. It's the only thing you can ever do for yourself to make you as whole and well as you can be. Thank you.